my motivation here on YouTube as someone that uploads Total War is to upload gameplay that's worth a damn, to have videos that I can publish that have value to other people and that showcase something that has something to it, that's substantive, that's virtuous. So when I buy a Total War game and I can't do that, the problem doesn't lie with me. I know how to play these games, so I'm going to try and figure out what the fuck is wrong with these games that's getting in my way and stopping me from making decent gameplay. If you look at my Shogun 2 videos, I'm always trying to push the game as far as possible, and the pinnacle of that project is my Impossible Battles series. And interestingly, I have one video in that series that isn't from Shogun 2. It was an experiment, an attempt to achieve something that I was convinced was probably impossible. But let's have a look at it. Alright, here we are. This was episode 3, and this was a difficult battle, a really tough battle, that I nonetheless beasted, totally outmatched. We have 3,800 against about 5,500, and they have better units than us. And when I fought this battle, I was doing as well as I could. I was trying to make the most of it, and what that resulted in is the running away simulator and avoidant gameplay that I describe in my Why Total War's last success was 8 years ago. And it's because of these hidden combat modifiers. I figured out what effective gameplay looks like in Three Kingdoms, and I showed it off in a way that I still don't think anyone has since with this video, where I push all the systems, all the units, as far as they can go pretty much. There's a nice manoeuvre I do, I'm going to try and find it. So I'm matching up my units perfectly. I'm using cavalry to run down archers, taking archers apart, catching them with my heavy cavalry. I've only got a few units of it. I'm demolishing. Alright, here it is, here's the moment. So I use a group to fire a whole clean, complete volley at that spear unit. Then I move the archers forward so they stop shooting. Then while it's moving, I hit into the side of it with the cavalry unit. Then it takes massive casualties, and then I hit it from the other side with the other unit. And I've taken out a unit spears for free pretty much, just with perfect micro and using combined units. And notice that it's cavalry and archers, only cavalry and archers here. And that's the whole battle. The whole battle I'm using my archers' ammo and cavalry, and I'm getting mostly free fights. And that's all I can really do. Fire with archers, use all their ammo, deplete all their ammo, and use cavalry to slam into the side of units that are moving, even if they have spears. And that's all you're ever going to do in Three Kingdoms, at least back then it was, because this game is just really shallow and flat. You're just doing that, and that's all it's ever going to be that you do. You can't find anything else because there's nothing else to be found. I tried at a few points to use melee units. Like, see these spears here? They got caught. They get caught in a rage. Let's find it. Let's see if I can find it. Alright, here we go. Face, turn to face, turn to face. So I've told those units to turn around. Spears against cavalry. Brace. Oh my god, were you not braced? They fucking didn't brace, man. Useless bastards. So even when you try and use spears and swords and axes, you get punished by the game, because the game is designed entirely around cavalry and archers at every level, and it's just a frustrating game to play. And then Troy comes along, and it's fucking even worse, because look at this. Difficulty producing a 7 KD advantage for AI. So even if you put your swords or your axes or your heavy spears into melee with other units of infantry, they get demolished. So it was just the same shit in Troy. You were forced to engage in avoidant gameplay and play a running away simulator for that game. So this is the direction that Total War has taken. It's just every game is going to be like this until they get rid of it. Every game is going to have an extremely restricted way of playing, and the higher up you put the difficulty setting, which is the only way you can really get any challenge out of the game whatsoever, and even then it isn't really a challenge. But you can only play on highest difficulties if you're going to play the game seriously. Come on, it's a fucking single player game designed to be beaten by people that have never played Total War before. I've got no choice but to play on the fucking hardest difficulties. It's just unthinkable and ridiculous that I would not. And that's the same for people that haven't played Total War before but that just are familiar with RTS games. You have to play on the highest fucking difficulty, come on. You need as much challenge as you can get out of these games because they're so easy otherwise. And that's what I outlined in my Why Total War's Last Success Was 8 Years Ago video, because it's becoming rampant and it's getting worse and worse. No Total War has ever had hidden combat modifiers more destructive than Troy Total War, with heavy spears losing 7-1 in a controlled fair fight. So this is a serious problem, it's a design problem, and people are now finally realising in decent numbers after a year, because I uploaded this in August of 2020 and got 2,000 butthurt Warhammer fanboys because of the title here and its implication. I didn't even have a direct accusation, it was all implied, and they still mobbed the video, 2,000 of them. Ridiculous. So here we are, a year later, and what do you know? On the shithole subreddit, they have a thread vindicating my hypothesis here. My entire fucking thesis is being confirmed by this post with 650 upvotes, 97%. 97%. Fucking 97%. Look at that. 3% have downvoted it, so that's about 20 people. 3% of 650 is about 20 people that have downvoted it, 650 have upvoted it. So there's overwhelming agreement, consensus here, that this post is on the mark. So let's look at this post, because this overlaps entirely with my main gripe with modern Total War. It was such a forefront gripe for me that I complained directly to CA about it over and over again when I was in their Discord. As I explain in this video here, Creative Assembly finally admits their difficulty scaling solution is malfunctioning and garbage. I go into that in this video, how I was actually complaining to CA as much as I could when I had some channels with them. But for now, let's look at this thread and then we'll go through this whole situation thoroughly and see how things have progressed after 1 year. And I maintain this is still the main obstacle in the way of me ever playing these modern Total War games and having fun and doing anything worth a damn and having anything that I would be willing to upload, because I'm not going to upload crap where it's one thing if I just do this one time to show what it looks like so I can reference it forever. That's it. I've showed Three Kingdoms at its best. The best that it affords is on display here. You're not going to get better than this. This is Three Kingdoms gameplay at its best, the pinnacle of it, where I've managed to extract everything out of the game. At least when this video went up in December 2019, so it was about 5 or 6 or 7 months after launch. It got patched a lot, of course, and the balance changed a little bit. The meta shifted a bit away from cavalry towards infantry, but still, I crushed here. Let's find the KD if we can. I remember this game was awful for showing you your KD and stuff. Let's see if I can find it. Kills and losses. Alright, so I lost 1,300 to kill 5,200. So that's a KD of 4 or 5, where I was really outmatched. This is not a battle that you should ever win, but I managed to win it by just knowing the game and being really sweaty. And look at that, 40 minutes, one of the longest videos, maybe the longest video in this entire series, because it was just so grindy. I was just exploiting everything available to me, the shitty AI, the cheesiness of how the units work. It was just a grind, a grueling, horrible fight, and I can never build on this. This was it. There was no way I was ever going to improve on this. So I just did not upload any more for this playlist. Look, it's all just Shogun 2. This is as close as you get to finesse Three Kingdoms gameplay, probably to this day, even with all the changes. I don't think there's better than this. Alright, so let's get back to the thread. How do you think CA could make melee infantry viable on higher difficulties without the ridiculous bonuses? And this is the problem here. It's one thing for melee infantry to just be bad and have a bad place in the meta, where they're usually going to get overlooked and not really brought and not be involved in the gameplay. But when there's ridiculous bonuses on top of that meta that punish their use and make them non-viable, even against equal equivalent power units, even if it's only for short time periods, like in a melee to use hammer and anvil, so even pinning is punished hard, it just ruins it. You're never going to bring them. You're always going to want to just bring cavalry, archers, artillery. That's just how it goes. It's a sad thing when melee infantry are barely better than archers at keeping the enemy pinned and controlling their movement. It's sad when that's the case, but apparently in Warhammer that's the case. It's definitely the case in Troy. It's definitely the case in Three Kingdoms. So it's just pathetic. It's an abject situation. I've complained about it a year ago. I was just harping on about it constantly, bringing it up over and over again, and now 650 upvotes on the shithole subreddit itself. Let's see what they have to say about this whole thing. I've watched all of the Legend of Total War tier lists, and I have to agree, right now, melee infantry is almost entirely non-viable on hard or very hard difficulty. Since archers and artillery do all the work, infantry has only 2 roles left. Hold the line, in brackets, dwarf ironbreakers. 2. Flank and ambush, nasty skulkers. This makes all the cooler units like Blackguard of Nagorond or Harganesh executioners. They can't fight other infantry and melee with difficulty debuffs, and you're pretty much always better off getting shades in this case. Oh man, this is such a badly phrased... Why is there a colon there? This is not a sentence. This is oh man. This makes all the cooler units like blah 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 and blah 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 crap. If you just had crap there before the colon, they can't fight other infantry in the melee with the difficulty debuffs, and you're pretty much always better off getting shades in this case. How do you think CA could make melee infantry viable again? By removing the fake difficulty, the artificial difficulty, how else? I said it a year ago. Get rid of it. That's how you do it. You just get rid of it completely. Don't even give people the choice to use that shit, to have to deal with that crap. There's nothing good that comes of it. It's garbage. Outnumber the player. Don't punish them so that they have to fight a weird, contorted, broken fight every time they hit fight battle. Alright, let's look at the new comments first. 6 days ago, because this was 8 days ago, just over a week ago now. So we're getting to it a little bit late, but now we can see how the thread went, seeing as it's matured a lot by a week. Difficulty needs to be based on better AI tactics, not buffs. Buffs are just lazy ways of making things harder. True, because things were difficult in Shogun 2 because the difficulty came from the campaign map pretty much. That's what I've always said anyway. That's the way I've always seen it. You would get outnumbered on the campaign map, and then when you hit fight battle, you would be fighting outnumbered 3-1 or 2-1. So that's another way to deal with it. In addition to just giving the AI better tactics, which is challenging and might never happen, you can just outnumber the player. This is how all RTS games handle difficulty. You're always outnumbered. Think about Red Alert 2, or Tiberian Sun, or Command & Conquer 3, or even Company Heroes probably. Just every RTS. Think of an RTS single player. Just name it. Name any single player RTS. You're always outnumbered. Every single time. It's the only way it can be fun. If you have the same amount of units as them, you don't have to think, and it's easy and it's boring. If they beat you unfairly, it feels unfair and it feels like it's bullshit. The way it works is that they outnumber you. That's how you have difficulty in all of these games. If we could have a good AI, which people are asking for, and which may never be possible because implementing AI in Total War is difficult to do, then great. But really, that was when Shogun 2 was fun. When you were outnumbered, it makes it fun ask for that, first of all. Ask to be outnumbered. And then to have good gameplay that you can use to resolve it. I want to be outnumbered, and I want to have well-designed, orthogonally differentiated units with complex systems so I can play a real-time tactics game and have fun. That's what I want. I'm not interested in playing shit games where the AI cheats in order to make up for the fact that I'm way smarter while they just have the same number of units as me. That is boring. Fucking boring shit. A comment in here said to have ammo replenish like HP, which is a good idea. So if CA remove all melee cheats and have ammo replenish like HP, slower ammo replen as difficulty increases. What? You could also have a basic amount you get after a battle, like 25% on normal, 20% on hard. What? No, alright, I'm gonna have to really be careful about what I actually read, because some of these are just silly, like, I don't understand that. Let's look at top comments now. There's also two very important aspects that I don't see many people talking about, which is cost and casualty replenishment. Cost is how the AI outnumbers you in Shogun 2 and all of the other Total War games, the earlier ones. Your units cost more, or rather, the AI pays way less, so they can field a lot more in casualty replenishment. For High Elves, Swordmasters cost 312 for upkeep and a whopping 350 for Phoenix Guard. Compare that to Sisters of Avalorn, which only cost 212. So not only better damage dealers and way more versatile, but a lot cheaper. For 350 upkeep you can get a Flame Spire Phoenix, which has a lot more tactical applications than Phoenix Guard. Same with Temple Guard for Lizardmen. 300 upkeep, where the much more superior unit and Bastildon Solar Engine cost the same. What? I don't know what any of this is. Your single entity DPS potential is the same, even at 1% hit points. Archers avoid damage, so they also have full DPS potential, ready for the next fight, while melee infantry, due to their nature, eventually will get damaged, and for a lot of factions it takes ages to replenish those, so you're stuck with subpar units getting even worse after battle. Melee infantry should have slightly higher base of replenishment compared to other units because they're the ones that suffer the most from it. Arguably, yeah, arguably this is the case. But this doesn't acknowledge the fact that you're taking these casualties due to fake difficulty. So this just ignores the actual problem that's being inquired about, in a way. The problem with Lizardmen is the Temple Guard aren't better enough to be useful, which is super sad. Yeah, they can hold for days, but they struggle killing anything. The Lizardmen have no infantry grinders. Even the humble Saurus Warrior can hold the line well enough. Temple Guard is only good for the halberd. However, Stegodons are good enough at hitting monsters with their artillery piece. Oh man. And they don't require 2 buildings to recruit. Exactly, so I personally and biasedly think they need a bit of a redesign, lol. Alright, they're just sort of discussing the in-game meta, a tiny corner of the game, which is not really interesting or useful to talk about in this context. And that's all the way up here, so it's not encouraging, that's not a good sign. This is also why Legend uses skeleton spam as vampire counts instead of single entity doomstacks. Skeletons are cheap, easily replaced, and replenished quickly thanks to the Von Karstein Bloodline Lords. They really make Graveguard an early game trap unit, because once you unlock free skeletons, 2 units of Graveguard are about as expensive as a Vampire Lord, a Necromancer, and 18 skeletons. Alright, so the thing to take away from this is that good players will use disposable units. They're incentivized to do that because the damage they take isn't real damage. Alright, more of this, more people talking about fucking trivial meta bullshit. They're not discussing the actual situation. You would think with a prompt like this, they would have something to say. They would recognise the state of the game and the problems. But they're just talking about... Well, maybe it's getting better now, but they were just talking about trivial shit. Could simply add ammo as a depletable resource that would replenish sort of the same way as casualties. So expend all of it and you might only have 25% one turn later. That sounds annoying, because archers are designed so that they have a capacity to kill a certain amount. And if you're just rationing out the ability of archers to get kills, you're just punishing them so that they're impotent as well. Are archers overpowered, or are infantry worthless when they shouldn't be? Which is it? Then someone responds, making ranged units weaker will not make melee stronger. The problem isn't that your melee units are weak or that your ranged units are strong. It's just that the AI gets too many cheats that affect only melee units. Correct? Exactly. So if you nerf range with ammo replenishment, you just end up with an overall inferior army to every one of the AI's 4 stacks with gold tier experience that now you have no way of killing, since melee is still shit and now you're also out of ammo. Yep. It would just make the game extremely tedious, where you would pick up your kills on even more sweaty edge case, extremely sweaty and micro-intensive exploitative actions. Like, you would eventually just start relying on charge bonus to chip away at the sides of units and then get out. It would just be really micro-intensive and pointlessly boring. That's what Three Kingdoms and Troy were. Look at my video of Troy. This one, 4 losses in Achilles' opening battle in Total War Troy. This is one of the most extreme examples you're ever going to see of using extreme, sweaty, attentive micro to get almost no losses against the AI. And that's what I do here. I rely on charge and extreme micro and just defeating in detail to do as much damage as possible to this army without taking any losses or risking taking any losses. There's almost no opportunity for the AI to kill any of my men, and it's just because I'm exploiting everything that's available to me in the game, just like I do with Three Kingdoms. You can't do this in Shogun 2, because Shogun 2 is a gritty, involved, punishing game where it's about opportunities that you create by taking risks. I'm not taking any risks here. I'm just exploiting shit AI with high APM and good attention and a reactive playstyle and single entity cheese abusing. I forgot to mention that. I'm exploiting the fuck out of Achilles. He's taking all the aggro, basically. Single entity problem. That's another one. When is the shithole subreddit going to start complaining about the single entity problem and how easy it is to exploit these men that have massive health bars of like 10,000 hit points? That just breaks these games completely. When you're punished so hard away from melee infantry, you're pulled hard towards single entity cheesing. Forgot to mention that. 4 losses against an army. Let's have a look. 4 losses to kill over to nearly 1,400, outnumber 2 to 1, and I take 4 losses by using melee and single entity and extreme sweaty micro. Look, this is it here. Look at this surround. Look at how sweaty this surround is. This is basically a full unit here. Look at how sweaty this is. Holy shit, I've pulled 1 unit away by using single entities, and then I slam into it from 2 sides. 3 sides, it's got 3 units attacking it from 3 different sides, and I take no losses. And it's gone, it melts, and then I'll mop it up. See how sweaty it is? That's what you're incentivized to do when you're playing a game that punishes infantry combat as hard as this one does. And it punishes it to the extent of a 7 KD and a melee. This is 2 units, 2 equal units coming up against each other. What are they called again? Heavy spearmen, I think. Heavy Trojan spearmen. 2 of them against each other. And the way that fight resolves is that one side wins against the other one with a 7 KD. Let's find it. 105 losses, 17 losses. So they killed 105 to lose 17 in a completely fair fight. That's how bad the difficulty modifiers were in Troy, which is the last full title that Total War's released. And all my complaining about that culminated in this. A blog in June the 18th. So that was about 8 months after my Why Total War's less success was 8 years ago, where I highlight this. And the second question is, are there any changes or improvements made to the difficulty system? So it's high up on the list. They obviously ordered it as they saw fit. Social media people ordered this. We're looking into it. No, wait. From a battle perspective, we've reduced the melee bonuses that the AI gets on hard and very hard, as they were very punishing for melee units. So I was complaining to CA pointlessly and just being fucking ignored, getting no real acknowledgement. I wasn't even getting told that my complaints were being considered and forwarded to the developers. But after 8 months of waiting, after uploading videos where I just harp on and on about it and slate these games for how bad this is, they finally acknowledge it like this. So that's all you can really do then. Just complain, not to them, but to everyone else that plays and buys these games. So eventually the whole zeitgeist gets infected. That's all they care about. If they think it will affect sales, they'll do something. If they don't, they won't. It's as bad as you could imagine. Alright, back to the thread. Making ranged units weaker will not make melee stronger. The basis of balance is that if you make something overpowered weaker, it indirectly buffs everything else. It is easier to nerf one thing than to buff a million things, and not everything should be buffed because it can cause power creep. If CA decides to buff melee units enough to match ranged, legendary difficulty could become the same as normal difficulty. Good. In that regard, it should be. It shouldn't be fucking botched. After all, ranged units do make legendary difficulty easy. Yeah, but that's only because the game is also designed so badly that you can cheese and get easy wins that way. You can't really cheese Shogun 2, alright? If you're getting attacked by an army of 5,000, the only way that you can win that is if you have units there that have tactical application and you're good enough at the game that you can actually push them and get the most out of them. The question is, do you want hard difficulty to be hard, or do you want to play easy/normal difficulty but label it as hard? We want a real challenge again, like Shogun 2, and to some extent Medieval 2. These modern games are not hard, they're just designed badly and force a warped meta that it's very easy to get around. We don't really want hard because we can make challenge ourselves. We just want meaningful gameplay, I would say. Let's be honest, none of these Total War games are fucking hard. These are really casual RTS/RTT games. If you want challenge out of these games, you have to contrive your own challenge. You have to set your own objectives and have your own restrictions. The game, as it presents it, is not challenging. There is no challenge to be found in vanilla Total War. It just does not exist. It's always easy to survive, it's always easy to win. What we want is for the gameplay to be good the whole time, and then after that we can make our own challenge. That's what I do in every game I play. That's what I do when I play Frostpunk, fucking Banished. What else? Command & Conquer. I'll have custom objectives and restrictions, and I'll have my own things that I want to do in the game, and then that'll be my objective. The objective is never just to merely survive. These games are not fucking difficult enough for my existence to ever be a threat. Come on. The problem with that line of thinking is that the ranged isn't OP. It does what it's supposed to do. The problem is somewhere else, and nerfing ranged units will not address that. 1. There are no real defences to ranged. A viable loose formation, like most other Total War games and shield formations etc., is what is needed, not a reduction in ammo. Basically, some melee units should be able to get to ranged units without getting killed. 2. The direct counter to ranged units, which is cavalry, is shit in Warhammer 2. If cavalry wasn't so bad, no one could spam ranged units and get away with it. The way ammo works for ranged units has been the same in every Total War game, but range spam isn't meta in, say, Rome or Attila, because there is a direct counter to it. Really, it's very simple. Harder difficulty shouldn't mean sluggish or repetitive. Harder means challenging. The trick is to actually make things challenging without resorting to making things grindy. It's like placing a level 90 boss at the end of a level 20 zone in an RPG. That's not challenging. That's artificially obstructing the players to force them to do certain things, and a sign of bad design. The problem with that line of thinking is that range doesn't up, it does what it's supposed to do. Alright, so he's quoting him and then he says, if you have 19 ranged units attacking one unit, that is 19 units worth of damage that can melt a unit. Alright. If you have 19 melee units attacking one unit, at best you have 4 units attacking one unit, but most likely it would be 2 units worth. So, if you look at Legend of Total War streams, his ranged doomstacks barely moves. There's no tactic involved outside of making a formation and making them decimate a target. There are no real defences to ranged. He was quoting the points there. He quoted them strangely. That says 2 there, and then it says 1 again. These 2 suggestions are another way that's saying nerf range units, but this time buff every other unit specifically against ranged, unlike either vice versa. In that case, you would have to buff/make changes to a lot more units to specifically counter range. I don't see where this is going, my god. Power creep. Alright, there's a lot of talking about arguing about force multipliers and Lanchester's laws here that I think goes nowhere. So I'm going to skip this. And then we'll go down. Very hard battle difficulty, 338 upvotes, so this is about half as much as the whole thread. Very hard battle difficulty needs to buff something other than melee attack and melee defense. The higher campaign difficulties also indirectly buff those stats by giving the AI tons of free experience, which has a compounding effect with the very hard stat modifiers in battle, leading to what we currently see. Yep. That's why the enemy always has gold chevrons. Why did I never figure that out? Yep, so this is something that the AI is given in, I think, only Warhammer. I don't know if Three Kingdoms or Troy do it, I've not seen it there, but in Warhammer, basically they just stack every system against the player when you put the difficulty up. The XP system, the money system, the stats system itself. So not only do they have better stats, but they have higher XP that synergizes. It has a multiplicative effect, I think, maybe, on the stats. And he just realised this here, so he doesn't even know he's getting cheated so hard. Oh yeah, the morale system as well. Yep, it buffs their leadership too. It's called leadership in Warhammer, which I really dislike. It's morale. Imagine calling morale leadership, fuck's sake, just to make it more accessible to the Warhammer kiddies. Since Shogun 1, it's been fucking morale. Everyone knows what morale means. No one knows what this leadership bullshit means. It buffs their leadership too, which is also another thing that very hard battle difficulty buffs. That's why they never break. Yeah, so the ability to even chain route is completely fucked. Chain routing is one of the most satisfying things that you can do in all of Total War. It's at the base of Sun Tzu. What is it? What's the quote again? To subdue the enemy without fighting is the acme of skill. Yeah, well, not in Warhammer, because you're not allowed to subdue the enemy without fighting them. You have to kill them, and you can only do it with ranged units. So it's just a partial war game. It's not Total War, it's partial war. A very fragmented partial war. 100%, I used to always doomstack because I was too focused on playing higher difficulty. I now have my battle difficulty set to normal so I can play with a normal army. I think improving AI tactics rather than buffs would be the way to go. I just want to think more about my army composition rather than spamming one type of unit. Oh my god. I'm not saying you can't use infantry on very hard and win, it's just not optimal. So it gets in the way of winning. If it's not optimal, it's an obstacle in the way of winning. So basically you can't do it. Of course you can click build unit, of course it's there in the battlefield, of course it will do a little bit of damage, but you're sabotaging yourself by doing it. You can't use infantry on very hard. It's just like Three Kingdoms. My infantry were more useful sitting at the corner of the battlefield. Let's have a look and see if we can find it. Look at that. Yep, see there they are. That's all my infantry. I kept them out the fight right up until the end, where the balance of power is already nearly full, and as you can see, all my infantry are still alive. So that's the only way they can help. If they're not involved in the fight, see that I'm just snaking them around the map? I'm just keeping them alive. They've played no part in the fight. They have 0 kills. You can see it in the HUD. 0 kills. It's just to give the enemy army losses. It was actually... See the balance of power? It should be way fucking worse, because I don't even use my infantry. I don't even use them. All I'm using is a few units of archers and a few units of cavalry. So it's even harder than it looks. I'm using only a tiny handful of units to overcome... What is it? How many thousands? How many thousands did I overcome? 5,500 or something? 5,500. I overcame that with only about 1,000 men. So it even sells me short in terms of what I achieved, because my fucking infantry did jack shit the whole fight. I won without using them. See that? They're all still alive. All my infantry are still alive. They didn't even participate. And that's what you have to do in Troy and Three Kingdoms and Warhammer. Not even expose your infantry to the melee, because every man that dies is going to pull that balance of power down, and that's going to mean that the army losses penalty stage is further away. So it just makes it harder. You're better off not even fucking bringing them. So it's just sad. See this? I just want to think more about my army composition rather than spamming one type of unit. That's just fucking sad, and that's why I just ditched Three Kingdoms. Pretty much ditched it after this video, because this really confirmed to me once and for all that this game is worthless for making decent gameplay. I'm never going to make gameplay worth a damn in a game that is designed as badly as this. And guess what? Warhammer is still designed as badly as this to this day, and Warhammer 3 is going to be the fucking same. Because they don't give a shit about making an actually good game that's designed properly. They just want shit that they can sell to a lot of fanboys. It's not just battle difficulty though. On Legendary, you end up fighting so many armies that people could really use commas on here. Fuck. Like going into melee with units you can't just heal full afterwards just means your losses stack up over time. Especially in the early mid-game where replenishment isn't fixable by heroes and lord skills. IMO melee needs a pretty sizable base replenishment buff, especially for units with a lot of models. Personally, I'd rather see ammunition be tied to replenishment somehow instead. If I compare the extremes, lots of replenishment would allow to fight lots of battles, while stricter replenishment would mean I'd have to wait more in cities. IMO, waiting in cities, is the boring part of the gameplay, so while I get that it's more realistic, which no one gives a shit about, even if they say they do, I'd rather fight more battles. IMO, the map gameplay, still isn't very interesting. People, oh my god, people keep having to do these caveats. I'm so sick of reading IMO and IMHO, my god. Hang on, I'm gonna get something for this.
That's never changed and is never going to, so he won't
That's
have...
your opinion,
nor will
Christopher.
anyone... Well, guess what? Guess who's saying it? That's a very clever thing to say. Shall I ask, would you prefer I uttered your opinion? What a fatuous remark.
Christopher.
And that just shows how redundant it is whenever people invoke this opinion word every fucking time. It's always redundant, it's always useless. Oh, it's just tedious, it just pads shit out. What else is this going to be but your opinion? Like, what the fuck else is it going to be? The map gameplay still isn't very interesting. Just imagine IMO was not here and he said the map gameplay still isn't very interesting. It would be so much more impactful to me, I would be much more attentive, but see, because he said IMO, that's just like a disassociation from his own... It's ironically what it is. He's trying to distance himself from what he is professing to be what he thinks. He is affirming that he's convinced of this, but when he says IMO, in my opinion, it makes me check out. My eyes are glazing over. See, if he just said the map gameplay still isn't very interesting, I would be perked up and I'd be thinking about what he said, but because he said IMO, and he keeps saying IMO, it just makes me not care. Like this, IMO, 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 like fucking hell. Just put a disclaimer at the start that says everything that I say here is going to be nothing but my opinion and not the opinion of my employer. Fuck's sake. I just feel that straightforward... I just feel that just I just feel that oh my god, as well. I just feel that just straight buff and melee replenishment would say just again, just make damaging units even less worth the effort if you don't win, and not change anything for the player because in general full ranged armies take less damage, so there's less need to replenish them anyway. Alright, so I think he's right about what he said here. If you increase the replenishment for melee, which is the postulation here, then you would be incentivized away from damaging melee units. And then for point 2, I don't understand at all. I really don't understand this. How is this a meaningful response? I don't get that. Damaging units if you don't win is basically useless on higher difficulties. That's what I was thinking as well. Yep, it would be useless. I was trying to think of a time where I've cared about whether I've damaged a unit and if the damage will persist, but I don't ever care. On higher difficulties in these games, you're always going to win and it's always going to be easy. And you're always going to be able to just mop up the entire enemy army. So who cares? Who cares? Yes, ranged units don't take losses in somewhat one-sided battles. Increasing melee replenishment would create the same situation for melee units, solving one of their issues. Why does that change nothing in your opinion? Am I misunderstanding your point? I don't get it either, and he hasn't had a response. He just checked out. A week ago he's gone. Games should never be balanced against Legendary. That's such an extreme and less played mode. Alright, but think about it this way. Even though only a small number of people play Legendary, everyone has Legendary to look forward to. That should be what everyone should want to graduate to. Getting good enough at the game that you can play it at its best. Because there's all these games out there where it's obvious you're just trying to get better at it, to wrestle with all of its mechanics and get so good at it that eventually you can experience everything it has to offer on the higher difficulties. Think about something like Dishonored, where there's all these abilities that you have, but in order to make the most of them, you have to really understand how they work systemically. That's what every player is doing, trying to get familiar with all of the systems, all the abilities, so that you can eventually start combining them and using them in ambitious ways to do really cool stuff. You're having ideas. When you first start playing a game like that, a systemic game, the motivation is to just get as familiar with it as possible, as quickly as possible. But that just doesn't exist here. You're just hiding away from the game, and that comes back to avoidant gameplay. This is how I think about these games now. You're just hiding away from all of these challenges that would pop up. You're just hiding away from having your units in melee, as I had to do, where I literally was hiding my melee units away from the battle. It's a neutered kind of partial war experience in a total war game, and that's pathetic. Numbers on the less played, because almost everyone I know plays either very hard or legendary nowadays. The game has been out for years and its gameplay is based on similar working titles. Everyone who wants to improve had plenty of time to do so. Yep, and you see this a lot. Eventually the casuals seem to represent a smaller proportion of the players. Look at Shogun 2. Everyone that plays Shogun 2 multiplayer now is a fucking beast. They've all got hundreds of hours and they're seasoned veterans. And then think about PUBG. PUBG at the very start, everyone had played for less than 10 hours and was crap at the game. But now, they had to fucking add bots because it was so hard for new players to get into the game. They would just get clapped. So they had to add bots so they could feel like they were actually landing shots. Honestly, who really cares about balancing a difficulty where everything goes anyways? What would be the disadvantage if melee units had more replenishment and easy/normal? What difficulty should it be balanced around in your opinion? It should be on normal, it should be balanced around normal. That's what you should always be playing if you're just a casual gamer. You should always be hitting normal. If you're handicapped, play on easy. If you really believe in yourself, play on higher than normal. For everyone else, it should just be normal. To boot, it's not like the game is balanced on any difficulty at the moment. The game is just easy enough on easy or normal that a good player can make anything work. Archer Doom stacks are as busted per cost on normal as they are on legendary. You can just decide to play a less effective melee stack because the game is less challenging. Hell, optimal play in normal is guaranteed spamming archer stacks because supply lines incentivize single entity stacks less. Single entity monster stacks less. and archers are both the most cost-efficient units, as well as pretty hard counters to melee infantry, which the AI builds a lot of. C is never going to spend huge amounts of time making really good AI just to use it for only the people who play Legendary. That would be an absolutely ridiculous investment for a small number of players. Yep, of course. Although in 3K the AI does perform differently at a higher difficulty than it does in the lower ones, if I remember correctly. Like, not wasting ammunition on a 100% missile block turtle formation. I don't know what became of that. That's true, but of course you can just keep clicking the button and use up all the AI's ammo. So it's just a broken, fucked system. 100% missile block is an abortion of a feature that's exploitable as fuck because you can have it turned on and off whenever you want. The volley can be about to come in and you can toggle this. It's ridiculous. So making good AI in a strategy game is a ridiculous investment for you. If they did good AI, not only legendary players would benefit, but everybody playing the game. So making good AI in a strategy game is a ridiculous investment for you. If they did good AI, not only legendary players would have benefited, but everybody playing the game. True. It would be a more pleasant experience for everyone. They would have more control over the experience of the player if they did that. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that making good AI is challenging and time-consuming and diverts resources away from other areas of the game. It's still a useful investment. But of course, they skimp out completely on these games. All the money goes into marketing. There's no reason for them to spend this money on AI when they can instead spend it on marketing and get a better return on investment. Look at them bickering now. See, it doesn't give a fuck about your opinion specifically, neither does anyone else. Yep, so this is what I would call LARPing as a shareholder here. He's right, of course, but he's not advocating for himself. He's trying to explain how they think, which everyone knows. And then this guy calls him out. I had to double check if I'm on a Total War sub or some other business sub. Sorry, but for me, making a good product is better investment than cutting costs. Yep, for sure it's better investment for the players because I don't care about opinion of CE accountants. Yep, this is it. See this shit here? Even if he's right, what the fuck is he doing saying this? When else would you explain the motivations of something horrible and shitty? When would you, like, it's like a lawyer sitting attempting to explain why his client fucking raped a bunch of kids. Why the fuck would you do this? Why would you attempt to explain their motivations for them when they're doing something garbage? He's explaining why a game developer isn't making a better game for them. What the fuck? Alright, I'm gonna upvote him because he's advocating for good games while someone is LARPing as a shareholder and just taking it so fucking far because he wants to win this argument. See, when people do this, they're essentially justifying the decision of the developers because they're not advocating for themselves. They're empathizing with their abusers, essentially. This guy wants a better game to play. That's why he's fucking here. But instead of asking for it, he's explaining and making more able to be understood the garbage motivations of an amoral company that's fucking greedy and wants to exploit him and give him shit for it. Give him as little as possible while getting as much money out of him as possible. And he wants to win this argument against the guy that's actually asking for something better. It's ridiculous. As long as AI has cheating buffs, it will never be good AI, period. And that was in response to this guy. Kinda, though the derpiness of the AI is an increasingly sore point, especially as the player gets all sort of units and capabilities and stuff the AI just cannot effectively deal with or make use of itself. Yep, so you never really see the AI using Yari Wall in Shogun 2. You never really see that, even though you should. You never see them using formations or general abilities. Like, when is the AI ever using stand and fight in Shogun 2? The player uses it all the time if he's smart. When does the AI ever use it? Never happens. The AI is just inexcusably shit in all these games. It's not even about having a difficult AI. A lot of the time it's just about having a functional AI because the AI is so bad. This is really a really salient point. Increasingly sore point. Like, see in Warhammer, I can't imagine. See, because Warhammer is just packed full of all this bullshit. I can't even imagine how lacking the AI is in terms of its ability to avail of it all. People should just ask for a functional AI, not a good AI, because we don't even have a mediocre AI. We should ask for a functional AI that can use what it has, because it fucking never does. I think a comparison can be made to FPS games. There's single player campaigns for players to mow down hordes of AI enemies. There's multiplayer modes for people who want to test their skills. Even if FPS game developers can create AI enemies that act and plan like human players, would they want to? Players are going to run into a single player campaign fight and get shot down over and over again, much like how it will play out in a real multiplayer match. Well, in Unreal Tournament, I remember the AI was actually tough, and it was one of the most thrilling experiences, probably to this day. It's really memorable. Playing against, what was his name, Zan, on Unreal Tournament, the final single player boss on the space station or whatever it is, that was really thrilling. That bot was actually tough, and that was almost as good as playing against a player, and that was like 20 years ago. I want a good AI. Having a challenge to look forward to is something every fucking player deserves. What the fuck is the point in just jerking your dick, comp stomping a shit AI, a fucking AI that's just brain dead and has no thumbs, endlessly, with nothing to aspire to, no new height that you can reach, nothing that can prove to you that you're getting better, because you're never going to get closer to beating that new challenge. Like, there's no higher peak that you're aspiring to conquering, because you've already beaten the shitty AI that's never going to get any better. It's stuck being brain dead. What kind of experience is that? It's just worthless. Yep, where I am at after so many years of Total War in general, I'm here for fun, fuck the other bullshit. And that was in response to this guy. Yeah, people have given up on trying to just spam 20 of the best unit to grind efficient wins. People are fed up with it. AI improvements need to be the next big thing. I would be in favour of that, absolutely. Legendary/hard player here. I've found that to be my preferred difficulty after playing very hard battle and relying on ranged heavy compositions, then switching to legendary/normal balanced armies for a time and stepping up to hard. Legendary campaign itself provides the overall challenge for me with more AI armies on the map, higher campaign debuffs and aggressive campaign AI, combined with no battle, slower pause, and little ability to save scum. You really have to use a combined arms approach with the campaign agents, multiple low-tier balanced armies, campaign strategy and battle tactics to get ahead. I do wish they would add some features from other games, an example being 3K where the AI does not fire on single entity or shielded units on higher difficulties, which makes such a big difference. Yep. So those are the AI improvements being recognised. Single entities do not take fire in Three Kingdoms, but at the same time, that made it really exploitable. You saw what I did on Troy here. Hang on. I'm just running around. I call it trolling with impunity. Achilles can just run up to infantry lines and take a lunge, kill a few guys and then run away, and he's not taking fire that whole time. Single entities are just fucked as a concept. There's no solution to this that I can think of. You would have to have some kind of unpredictable intermittent decision making from the AI when it shoots, a dynamic kind of system, because I know the archers are not a threat, so I do whatever the fuck I want, and I can pull units out of the line and run away like this, and it just becomes a ridiculous, absurd gameplay experience where the AI is just brain dead and broken and exploited and helpless. It's completely helpless. There's nothing the AI can do. It's there for the taking, and I can just bully it and exploit its inadequacies, its shortcomings. See this? Look, I'm just bullying units one at a time. It's broken. There's no challenge. It means nothing. Waste of time for me to do this. Would this idea work better or worse, having AI on hard/very hard taking longer to get exhausted instead of melee attack/defense buff? I believe, well, that would be bad, because that would mean that the stamina system cannot be used by the player, which is the opposite direction we should be going in. Stamina should feature more. It's a system that is being neglected, just like weather is gone, just like climate is gone, because in Rome Total War, you could have camels get horses tired on desert maps and then break them with your fear effect. You could have British infantry that are used to fighting in the snow cope better with the cold than Roman infantry and have more stamina during fights, especially longer fights. This stuff is systemic, and it adds depth to the gameplay, and it gives the player something to think about and use. We should not be removing this. This is what CA's been doing, taking things out of games. Don't take any more out. I believe another option could be limiting units of higher tier similar to Tomb Kings for both player and AI. So unit caps. Maybe I could see how unit caps could help with this. That's what mods do, I think. And then someone says, reload speed for artillery and missile units is also buffed for the AI, a factor of 10% on hard and 20% on very hard. And then someone responds, that's true, although ironically that makes them easier to cheese if you're inclined to do that sort of thing, which is ridiculous. It demonstrates perfectly how absurd the whole situation is, that when you do something that's supposed to make the AI more formidable, it actually makes it easier to deal with because it means that they expend their ammo faster. See this? See how it's just completely backwards? It has the opposite effect as intended. The consequence is not desired. It's counterproductive. That's how just a mess this game is. That's how out of touch the developers are with the player experience. The stuff that they do to give challenge mitigates the challenge, ameliorates the challenge. Jesus. Funny enough, the AI spending its ammunition faster leads to a faster army losses penalty, as their battle prowess lowers significantly. This, of course, assuming they're rather wasting their missiles somehow. Oh yeah, exactly, and that's another knock-on effect. In Warhammer, when units deplete their ammo, the balance of power acknowledges that their ammo's gone, so the army losses penalty happens faster. Fuck's sake, that's ridiculous as well. AI sucks at picking targets. Cheesing the ammo with lords/heroes aside, they tend to shoot the first thing they see. So if your front line is made up of crappy goblins who also have shields, you getting shot by the enemy often increases your balance of power even though you're the one taking damage. Yeah. But at the same time, see if the AI was smarter than this, I think players would maybe get frustrated, a lot of them. I think this is something that's easy to implement, but they deliberately don't do it, because if people get what they ask for, they will not like it. And this is why you don't want a useless consumer base of incompetent, inept players, because they actually want to get fed shit. They actually want garbage. And then someone responds with, AI prioritizes not to fire on single entities or shielded units from the front. Such a small change makes a large difference. It's not really that hard to solve. Heck, Total War games as far back as Rome 1 didn't have such a big problem in this regard. Oh yeah, this is true, because I remember when I was testing Tessudo, and I made a really big deal of this in my video, the degradation of Total War's Tessudo. I showed how Rome 1 had a way better AI than Rome 2 or Attila, because in Rome 1 the AI actually prioritizes firing into the backs of Tessudos, but in Attila and Rome 2 the AI picked the worst target. Actually, a lot of the time they would pick the target that was farther away and that was facing it, instead of picking a target that presented its rear. I'm gonna get that. See, here it is. They're firing at the Testudo that's facing it instead of the Testudo that's facing away. So that was another thing that I tested in this. I was showing how the AI is so bad. That one's facing away, that one's facing towards, that one's closer, and yet they're firing at that one. See it? They're facing away. They're the obvious target, but they're firing at that one instead because the AI is so shit. It's embarrassing. Degradation of Total War Tessudo. And then he goes on, I get that Warhammer is a lot harder to balance than historical titles due to the variety of units, but still, it's not like they don't have the necessary know-how. Of course, they just decide not to. The AI does prioritise high-value targets when in range, and shoots crappy goblins if your high-value targets are a step behind them when it would have been better off just waiting. This. Don't you mean that? I think you mean that, not this. That. You're pointing at something over there, not something over here. That. Give them ward save instead. Make it affect range and magic, not just nerf melee. Don't know what this means. Just do it like SFO and give them more hit points. Alright, I probably am going to skip some of this. Alright, next comment. 300 upvotes. Still pretty good comments and upvotes, it seems like. Nerf the stats that AI gets in very hard. Everyone comes up with these insane ways to fix very hard battles. Just nerf the cheats that AI gets and give them other shit instead. Ding ding ding, ding 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 ding. Maybe let them bring 25 units into a battle. Yeah, like Shogun 2 did. Like I said in my video why Total War's last success was 8 years ago. Shogun 2's triumph. Look at how triumphant this game was. Look at this overcoming fucking stacks. Destroying it with pure tactics. Look at them pouring units in and I'm dismantling them. I'm facing them head on. And I'm micromanaging and countering and rock, paper, scissoring. And I'm paying attention to my XP and my morale. I'm covering my flanks. I'm trying to chain morale. I'm looking at the units that are the most dangerous to me. All this shit that's going on, it's only possible because I'm outnumbered and because I have to be really effective with everything I do. So obviously what you want to do is, like, what is fun in a game to you? What is fun in a strategy game, a Total War game? How do you get that? That's all you should be asking. Or increase hit points. No, because that fucks up the unit versus unit engagement as well. The tactics get destroyed by this. I like this idea of making the AI infantry tougher rather than buffing the stats, which make infantry fights pointless for human players. There's no way a tier 1 should be a tier 3, just make the AI tier 1 last a little longer hit point wise. No, it's still shit. You'll fucking hate this. Buffing the HP might have the same effect. Yeah, of course it would. Though I guess it would also slightly reduce the effectiveness of ranged units. Yeah, it would as well, exactly. That would be the thing. It would just make units into fucking bullet sponges, which are horrible. It's one of the worst consequences of fake difficulty, artificial difficulty. Bullet sponges. Just remember back to Agronak, Gromalog, and fucking Oblivion. Jesus Christ, Skyrim on the highest difficulty. Endlessly fucking slashing away when they should die after the first few swipes. These games are boring because of this. The tension is gone because you're always playing well enough that your unit's never going to die. If their units are fucking never going to die either, it's a boring ass fucking game. It would also slightly reduce the effectiveness of ranged units, but you still wouldn't be able to trade, i.e. a unit of infantry for the player would lose to the same unit under the AI solely due to that point differences. It may be better to just have high tier infantry be a bit more missile resistant for the AI, so we'd have to have melee infantry killers. Maybe, but if the AI stats are lowered except for extra hit points, things like buffs and debuffs become much more viable. Artillery bypasses missile resistance, so the player would just use artillery to smash the infantry. No. The HP increase wouldn't solve much, but I generally agree. Let the AI bring more units, but those units behave like normal battle difficulty. Also, give archers and winds of magic the same replenishment system we give to HP and casualties. If you use too much ammo or winds, it's not going to be replenished immediately the next battle. Finally, give single entities a higher cost, much higher, without debuffing them at all. They're pretty balanced where they are. Imho, they just need to be rare and feel expensive in campaign. Not to the point where they come out of the meta completely, but enough to not make them a no-brainer choice over infantry. And fixed, without nerfing anything, mind you, the top potential of every unit stays the same, so they are satisfying to play as they are now, but you balance their effectiveness on the campaign map. IMO, the problem with SEMs is mainly supply lines. IMO, the problem with this fucking IMO guy again. Oh my god, get rid of this speech crutch. The problem with single entity monsters is mainly supply lines. Until we replace supply lines with, for example, FE. Is he saying FE as for example? What the fuck? People are so strange on here. F.E. Jesus, this is so American. So American. Because they can't remember E.G. Corruption costs will always matter a bit less than slots later on. And if you increase single entity monster costs to the point where they stop being viable, I don't think people will bring them at all. Balancing them to the point where terror is the main factor while you bring 2 to 3 sounds hard to me. I'd prefer it if SEMs were more similar to other unit types, and while a bunch of halberdiers giving a dragon trouble sounds weird, Warhammer's a scenario where Tyrion, who basically is... It's always weird that there's a guy called Tyrion in this, who basically is just a powerful HE swordmaster, beat a named bloodthirster. Oh, I don't understand any of this. Literally this. Playing on very hard battle difficulty is just crippling yourself into ranged units and making any other unit non-viable, which is why I prefer legendary / hard difficulty. CA just needs to invest in some decent ML tech. What does ML mean? Build something that plays the game and don't try to write a set of rules to control such a diverse set of units. Their AI is essentially unchanged from the days of Rome. It's had a few bugs and exploits fixed, but it's fundamentally the same, and in a lot of ways it's worse, as I've demonstrated in my degradation video. I think leadership bonuses are a good thing. What? No, fucks up the morale and makes chain routing more difficult or impossible. But I do think melee attack and defense shouldn't change with difficulty. Damn right. The main issue is the prevalence of armor-piercing missiles and magic. In Rome 1/Medieval 2, armor-piercing was rare and magic of course non-existent. This allowed heavily armoured and shielded infantry to actually be viable, as you could outlast missile infantry armies as long as they didn't flank you. Missile cavalry was a different story of course. Add to the fact that missiles without direct line of sight were incredibly inaccurate in those games. Sure, you could focus fire down a group of foot knights, but you'd waste a lot of ammo doing it and it's going to take a long time. And also you would just be really incentivized not to. You would much rather get around and do side damage, as was described. Yeah, this is a huge factor. IMO. My god, the IMO guy again, with his fucking IMO bullshit. Especially low tier trash archers shouldn't hit upwards of 80% of their missiles on max range. Why didn't he say IMO? This results in most trash archers effectively having more than 4 times as much DPS as their melee counterparts, which creates these absurd focus fire situations where your armoured fast chariots just get shot down by a bunch of peasants with bows before it gets into melee range. Should say IMO again. Don't know if I'm understanding this. It doesn't seem like a big deal. I feel like AP on magic is probably okay for the most part, since it's a finite resource. Definitely agree that AP missiles are too good though. I'm still not sure why repeater crossbows are AP either. I enjoy magic a lot in the game, but if I'm totally honest, vortex spells and some of the winds really dumb the game down a lot and basically can swing a battle in one mouse click. Yeah, it's like I've always thought of magic spells in Total War as just being fucking naval bombardments in Total War, except all of the gameplay removed because it's just instant. You just click to delete units, whereas before it was high risk, high reward, and it was really timing based. If the battles are supposed to be somewhat balanced and more reliant on unit manoeuvring, some of these outliers that just annihilate whatever they hit definitely could use a nerf. Yeah, it's just click to win. Click to win. And also it's APM burden as well. On the flip side, spells could be a lot more effective in campaign versus low entities. There's basically no damage spell that's reasonable to use against monstrous cavalry, and even against SEMs, most spells are very underwhelming. So it's crowd control then. People are talking a lot about armor piercing. My god, they're not really addressing the issue here. It's not about the fucking bows and the archers and armor piercing. It's really not. It's about the infantry in the game and their place, and that's determined by the difficulty modifiers. That's it. These people are all talking about fucking legendary difficulty. They're not talking about how the game works on normal. Armor piercing was also different in Rome 1 and Medieval 2. If I remember correctly, all attacks do at least 1 armor piercing damage now, and armor piercing totally bypasses armor. In Rome 1 and Medieval 2, armor piercing applied to all of a unit's damage, but it didn't totally bypass armor. It was effective against armor, meaning an armor piercing attack would roll against half the unit's armor value instead of the full amount. Yeah, that's what I was going to say, because I thought he wasn't going to get around to it. Armor piercing ignores half of armor. Having armor was still better than not having armor, just less helpful. Yeah, it was proportionally less valuable. You really want to put your highest damage armor piercing units up against the highest armor enemy units, always. Tar pit and hold the line units, for example, dwarf shield units, tend to be fine. No, they don't, because they should be way better. If they're getting fucking attacked horribly by difficulty modifiers, then they're not fine at all. you're not seeing them in their full glory. They are neutered. They are fucking neutered completely. The main problem is in the units that focus on dealing damage, great swords and hammers. Even though they deal superior melee damage and will win against most other opponents eventually, the process is extremely slow and they'll probably go down to ranged fire or magic in the meantime. Also, super expensive melee units just die as fast to artillery as cheap fodder, which is also very underwhelming. As they should. This is how it's supposed to be. This is just part of the equation. It's supposed to be like this. You've skipped over the actual problem, which is up here. They will win eventually. They're supposed to win reliably, way faster, against way more units, against way more opponents. It's not acknowledging the problem. My suggestion is that damage-focused elite melee infantry should have smaller unit sizes but higher entity stats to compensate. No way, then it just turns into another situation where you have no infantry. Addresses several problems. Having too large of a unit size means that 8% of the blob just sits there and watches while the other 20% do the actual fighting, which is really inefficient. It's not inefficient, that's just the nature of infantry. What the fuck? That's formations. You're objecting to a formation with dimensions. Infantry with melee attacks are not supposed to bring all of their might to bear upon the enemy all at once. That is absurd that you would think this is an issue. You want to just completely circumvent all shaped formations that have depth. Fuck's sake. Oh my god, they're advocating against formation warfare. This is absurd. This is absurd. By having fewer entities, you're a smaller target for artillery fire and small arms fire as well as magic. It's not a good thing. Come on, if you have high quality infantry, you should be worried about artillery and small arms and stuff. That is the gameplay. Fucks. You want to just not have to think. You want to just not play and not think. Fuck's sake. It makes it quite clear that these units are not meant to hold the line, and it is easier to push past them with a lower entity count. On the other hand, it makes them more manoeuvrable, quicker to turn around, etc. When is this ever an issue? These games are so streamlined and simplified and arcadified that units can just run around the battlefield at super speed. What the fuck? You're running around at full speed the whole battle? What the fuck? There is no such thing as manoeuvrability anymore. It's just a stat on a spreadsheet. You don't have to pay attention to stamina anymore, even. Like, what the fuck? What the fuck? Look at this advocating for tiny units. 7, 14, 21, 28 instead of 20, 46 to 80. What the fuck? I also think that melee infantry should have much better replenishment rates than ranged, maybe a multiplicative ×2 with caps still at 50% or something like that to compensate for the fact that ranged heavy armies can roll over inferior armies with no losses. This is really weird to read. Alright, I need to go further down, find something else to look at. These are all bad ideas, and so often they just include keeping the bad decision. Alright, this one's interesting. First of all, why do you even play at a battle difficulty above normal in the first place? For me, it is absolutely of no interest due to the AI unit cheats, making Skaven slaves as strong as greatswords. Thanks, but no thanks. Of course, you're right here about these cheats, but I'm going to be playing every game on the highest difficulty, and if it isn't fun, I'm fucking moving on. There's no way I'm going to fuck around on pleb difficulties in games that are designed for your average gamer because the game is designed bad. I'm going to fucking try to play it on the hardest difficulty and see the best the game has to offer for players that are competent, that are adept, intermediate, advanced. And if the game is fucking shit where it should be shining the brightest, I'm fucking moving on because I've already figured out that this game is trash and I'm done with it. So I'm going to play on the highest difficulty. I'm going to do everything I can to get fun out of that, and if there isn't any, I'm fucking gone. And that's what I've done, and that's what you should do as well. Regarding ranged power, one major issue I see is the ridiculous firing arches of some ranged units like bows/crossbows being able to fire with next to pinpoint precision. People talking about the arcing, but they're not even talking about guns. But look at this. The sky-high arch and curves some projectiles in Warhammer travel is utterly ridiculous and makes blocking ranged fire with shielded units next to impossible against certain units like bows. Then someone comes back on the difficulty thing. Yeah, I understand people like challenges of playing harder battle difficulties, but for me it just ruins the immersion. I feel as if I have to bring armies of almost all range to counteract it. Yep, because the game's designed like shit. Which makes raising the difficulty pointless as you just doomstack. I do find the game a bit easy sometimes, but I have got like over 1,000 hours in it, so I suppose I'd better be good at it by now, lol. Right, I'd rather just use balanced armies on normal difficulty. Also for me, playing on very hard campaign difficulty stops the ability to doomstack for a considerable amount of time. Once I get to the point I can afford armies of single unit monsters and higher range units like that, I generally feel it's time for a new campaign. Yep, so people aren't even experiencing the late game. Not only are people playing on Legendary and just having fucking stacks of 20 of the same unit, which completely undermines the ability to bring multiple units, but they're not even playing into the late game and experiencing the game properly. See how badly designed this shit is? See how much of a fucking train wreck, a teleological train wreck this fucking game is? Do you see it? I originally played very hard since other difficulty settings felt too easy back in Warhammer 1, but watching Cav lose to Goblin Archer soured me on that. Then in Warhammer 2 I went to Legendary/Normal. That was reasonable, but the inability to micro enough or go to slow time in battle meant I could hardly use character and unit abilities or position things. I basically depended on missiles to kill everything while I desperately tried to keep my Cav and flankers alive. Wow, holy shit. A game that is as micro uninvolved as Total War usually is, and you can't keep up. Fuck's sake, and you're using archers to just crutch yourself because it's such a passive unit, ironically. That's why I think difficulty modifiers have always attacked infantry, because people thought that infantry were the passive unit. You just put them there and they stand there with their sword and shield, and you watch the fight happen, but it's really ranged units that are like that. I think that was the mistake that was originally made by the Total War developers of their first Total War game 20 years ago. They misidentified the most passive unit that plebs would try and crutch themselves with as infantry when it's actually archers. I basically depended on missiles to kill everything while I desperately tried to keep my Cav and flankers alive, since missiles would just keep shooting while melee units forgot where they were, what they were doing every 10 seconds. Having to put 2 PO buildings in every province also got irritating, whatever that means. And I'm trying very hard/normal while trying to not abuse, pause or save reloading. I'd rather just use some kind of slower battle mod, since the dislike units go in 100 to 5% in 10 to 15 seconds, but most of the Steam mods seem old. Talking about mods now. I recently started to play on normal difficult again, and it's a much more enjoyable experience. I knew it. See? They're fucking admitting it finally. A year later and they're fucking admitting it. I play on Legendary because, truth be told, normal is an absolute snorefest in regards to difficulty. Yep. I know the second I hit play on a normal campaign that I will win with almost always 0 lost battles for the entire campaign. It's not fun knowing you will win every battle because the AI is useless, and on the campaign map you just do anything you want with no repercussions because the AI can't even threaten you. I may as well just play battle mode and build 100k gold armies to smash Skaven slave armies if all I want to do is dumpster shit at AI armies. Yeah, exactly. Welcome to being a Total War player with an IQ over 40. The melee is the most annoying part of high difficulties that is fundamentally not fun, as it removes most melee strategies from the game. Exactly. The campaign difficulties etc. are still there, it's just the crazy stat bonuses that make battles less enjoyable with how you're forced to counter them. Exactly. Well done to this guy with the number name, the password name. Exactly. That's it. You can change battle and campaign difficulty separately. If you don't like the battle buffs they get, lower the difficulty to normal. Interestingly, Troy, and I remarked on this here. Hang on. Interestingly, this is the first time I've seen a legendary campaign difficulty that also greys out the battle difficulty upon selection. You couldn't even avoid this if you wanted to. I think this is true. I don't remember ever seeing this before. I think that's true. You can change battle and campaign difficulty separately, unless you can't, because you're playing on legendary. If you don't like the battle buffs they get, lower the difficulty to normal. It's boring, he already said it's boring, so he's not going to do that. He's going to just move on like me. I'm never going to play a game on normal difficulty for as long as I live, while I still have my mental faculties, and while my reaction time is under fucking 300 milliseconds, and while I can think faster than old people fuck. No thank you. You're literally clicking a button that says, please give my opponents melee buffs, then complaining the AI gets melee buffs. No, he's clicking a button that says, this is for players that are competent, and he is competent, so he's going to click that button, and then he's complaining because the way the game gives challenge to him, puts challenge in front of him, is fucking garbage, and it flies in the face of all sound game design principles, and it's the complete opposite of what pretty much every other RTS or RTT does. Fuck's sake, look at this excuse making, look at this fucking garbage. I can understand legendary campaign difficulty, but battle difficulty is just bad in my opinion, yep. It's just bad IMO, yep. Remove the melee debuffs and find a more creative way to make the game harder. There we go, I'm going to screenshot that shit, and that's going to be the thumbnail for this fucking video. There we go. There we go, that's the thumbnail. We need better AI instead of cheating AI. This has been a problem in RTS games for as long as I can remember. Age of Empires 2 found a way to have a real AI that challenges the player, and it's fucking great. It is great. It's a problem because if a software engineering group was able to make an AI breakthrough good enough to satisfy RTS gamers, they'd be making the big bucks in a Google research group or something, not making strategy games. That is not a knock on game designers, but rather point out how freaking hard AI is to write and how unrealistic our standards are. But remember, the AI has been getting worse, and they are able to do a lot of the stuff that people are asking for. Abilities. Look at the decent melee infantry that are actually viable on legendary / very hard, like Nasty Skulkers or Ironbreakers. Both are still really good because of the extra utility they bring. That would be orthogonal unit differentiation in action. And I'll be real, since I'm sick of seeing it, people calling for ranged to be nerfed have no clue what they're talking about. You nerf ranged and things move even further towards single entity stacks, which is already the strongest unit type, not ranged. Ranged are the only effective counter to those units. Alright. Single entities are already nerfed due to wounds debuff in Warhammer 3. From what I heard from others, a part of what made elite infantry elite in other Total War games is that there was little to no armor-piercing missiles, which meant they were not shredded by a few cheap units with crossbows. There's a few solutions to that. They could nerf the armor-piercing missile damage... They could nerf the armor-piercing missile damage across the board, but it could make armoured monsters too tanky. They could give missile resistance to all elite armoured infantry, which could help negate the AP missile damage, but also affects the non-AP missile. They could also rework the APR armor system, but it affects so many things that it could be pretty difficult to implement correctly. I personally don't have an idea of what the rework could be. There's obviously also the melee buffs that the AI gets that should be changed on top of that. Okay, we'll just do that and then see how things are and then go from there. That's the main thing in the way at the moment. This is the main problem. What's the point in discussing second level stuff when the stuff on the surface is still fucked? You have to get your house in order before you can start thinking about luxuries. You have to get the basics solved before you can even assess the more complex stuff. Alright, a lot of repeating going on now. People are just repeating what's already been said, I think. Or was said elsewhere that we've already looked at because it had more upvotes. People talking about how armour works. See how there's a lot of discussing about armour piercing and armour and all these bullshit stats, all this spreadsheet crap. To be honest, people keep using these speech crutches in this place. People rely really heavily on crutches in terms of how they structure their comments and stuff. IMO, IMHO, if I remember correctly, to be honest, every fucking comment, holy shit. The best nerf to missile units would be to increase the impact fatigue has on them. Fatigue has basically no effect on rate of fire, but smashes melee attack into the ground. Like, it's about a 3% reduction in rate of fire, imperceptible in almost every unit, but it double dips against melee by reducing melee attack by 30% and weapon strength by 10%. Bring that penalty in line by reducing reload speed and maybe accuracy by a meaningful amount, and it would mean ranged units who tend to stand and blast away for long interrupted periods would tail off the longer they did it in a way they currently just don't. And he's saying no one knows what it would look like if missiles get nerfed. Right now, the only reason big monsters aren't kicking everyone's ass is because they die to cheap missile fire in campaign and MP, he says. The way to make melee viable isn't by nerfing things that beat it. In campaign, all CA has to do is take away the leadership buff that AI gets. Dumb players lose fights they'll lose anyway. Good players that know when to brace, countercharge, flank, envelope, etc. actually get to use those tactics to get the win. There we go. Yep. Good shit, good comment here. Which is its own problem. IMO, the cheap missiles, should never be the damage dealer. If you want to effectively kill monsters, then do it with strong range units or anti-large infantry and cavalry or arch or characters. Alright, we'll just have to agree to disagree then. Agree to disagree. Fucking hell. Thought terminating cliche. Giving up. I'm giving up. Just give up. Just admit you're giving up. Don't try and dress it up and make out something it isn't. Nerf ranged. Again. I think you could probably shift the very hard battle difficulty for melee somewhere between hard and what it currently is. Unit interactions on hard battle difficulty still feel correct. Things don't feel like they're out of whack until you get to very hard. Oh man, that's so bad. But it's still acceptable to get fucked over by bullshit cheats that the AI gets. Fuck that. Also, fuck this guy. I remember he was one of the fucking weirdos when I was getting smeared. I remember the names of the fucking arseholes, and that's one of them. It's hard to fix because there are a few problems which compound with each other. While some are rather easy to fix, others are actually very hard, time-consuming and expensive to fix. AI is very lacking, CA knows it. To ensure battle remains challenging, units receive a boost across the board on harder difficulties, which is one of the main reasons melee infantry performs so bad and very hard. One major step would be to work extensively on improving the AI so that it stops doing most of the outrageously stupid shit it's known for. Once the AI's been fixed properly, we can talk about removing the bonuses, but before that, the most that can be done is shifting them around somewhat. Simply removing them would be disastrous since very hard is already kinda easy to game and cheese. Yep. Current melee infantry is rather balanced for multiplayer, but it's counterproductive to use in campaign on the harder difficulties. I know most people don't give a shit about MP, but we cannot fix melee infantry in a way that breaks them in MP. Yeah, you can have two separate modes. Of course you can, easy. Here are a few problems which will require some incremental fine-tuning over a long period of time with proper monitoring to ensure that nothing breaks in either game modes. Oh man, this is a lot of writing. A lot of repeating. That was just too long for this subreddit, I think. No one even upvoted it. Even though it encompasses a lot of what's already been said. Make magic uncastable when in melee like it was in tabletop. This would allow us to send high mobility units to shut down casters. Doesn't completely solve the issue of magic, but it's something at least. Really? You can't do that already? It's really weird. Fuck's sake. If you can't do that, then that's just strange. That makes the game really, really casual. Fuck's sake. It doesn't matter if you're in melee then. It doesn't even matter. Game is really casual and easy. Nerf Ai Cheats. People saying that increases to melee stats are acceptable ever. Fucking hell. Bring back weather. Oh man. I recall in earlier Total War games we had weather effects, so things like fog or rain could either reduce effectiveness in range, or rain and such increases chance of missing. Wow. Reduce cost of elite melee, raise cost of basic and elite archers. Archers are ridiculously cheap, and elite infantry ridiculously expensive. I think melee should last longer, aka more durable units for one. Also, ammo should be like a supply of the army that needs replenishment, like troops for close boys. What the fuck is this saying? Get rid of difficulty settings altogether. Yay, another winner. Another winner. Find your own challenge if you want it from a game that's designed well. Easy solution, easy solution. I I think the problem is just inherent to melee infantry. Even at normal difficulty battles, I find infantry extremely lacking and compared to other Total Wars. Yep. To go back to Legends Total War's tier list, some of the strongest Doom stacks, Dragons, Stegodons, Knights of Torgaval, etc. melee units, suffering from exactly the same AI buffs as infantry do. If the melee attack melee defense buff was reduced to help infantry, it would help the single entity Doom stacks just the same. With introduction of magic and better artillery, infantry has been superseded in the role of tanky frontline by the largely immune single entities. Yep, exactly. And honestly, I don't know what CA can do about that. Yep, exactly. Infantry have just been obsolesced, pushed out of the battlefield, which is what they're meant to be front and centre of, literally, and have been replaced by single entities. Until the Blackguard learn to tank a cannonball or calm it better, I just don't see how they can be viable. Yeah, fair enough. There are quite a few viable ones if you put some effort into it. There are factions who can really boost them. Oh my god, fucking hell, boosts, spreadsheeting, stacking fucking 5% here and there all over the place. Not proper differentiation, not meaningful gameplay. Vertical gameplay, just stacking numbers endlessly, spreadsheet. Fuck that. Fucking worthless. Stupid numbers, arbitrary, not earned, pointless. This is just a stupid premise and wrong. Melee infantry is absolutely viable on hard. No, it isn't, because it gets nerfed on hard, so it's not viable. There's no issue at all with melee infantry on hard. Yeah, there is. There's the fact that it gets nerfed to have unnatural outcomes in its matchups. Melee infantry is still viable on legendary, but less so. No, it isn't, because it gets destroyed completely. It needs some support and tactical awareness, but it's still viable. If it needs support and tactical awareness to be viable, it is not viable, because no other units need that. All other units stand on their merits and do what they're supposed to do. There are things that can be done, but I can assure you melee infantry is perfectly usable on hard, and are still usable with some skill on very hard. No, they're not, because this is so stupid. Prove it. Upload a video showing us where you get a good KD by bringing a balanced army and all of your infantry units perform just as well as all your ranged. It will never happen. You're talking shit. I understand how these multipliers work and how things get stacked and the kinds of KDs you're talking about. Just look at this here. 7 KD, 105 losses to kill 17 because of the difficulty modifiers, and that was in Troy, which is arguably way more extreme than Warhammer. Who knows? No one ever fucking does tests on this stuff, so I don't even know what the ratio is for medium spears against medium spears on Warhammer, medium swords against medium swords on Warhammer, heavy spears against heavy spears on Warhammer. No one has found these numbers and reported them to me, so I can't tell you what they are. But what they are is bullshit, and it means that it's not viable. The main problem with Very Hard is that many different unit archetypes do not function properly for their cost. It is not that they're not viable, it is that you will never get them to do their niche. Wait, it's niche? Niche? What the fuck is niche? American as fuck. Niche role when it takes a few minutes to kill tier 1 infantry with tier 3, so it's not viable. I think a big HP buff and Very Hard would be the best course of action. No, it's fucking garbage. We already had Shogun 2. Shogun 2 showed you what to do, and as a result, it gets lauded to this day, and I can still upload really cool stuff and push the game even further to this day. It's as if they've never had an actual good Total War game, which it seems like they haven't, because none of them have ever played anything except shitty Warhammer. Keep everything constant except for hit points. That way the AI still gets cheats, but your killing units can still can actually kill the enemy. 25% HP on hard, plus 50% on very hard. Sounds fucking absolutely cancer. I play in Very Hard campaign in normal battle, since it does just unbalance the units in the battle. Works fine, I think. I think Legend said this himself, but the only real way to have difficulty scale in a way that's fun is to have adaptive AI instead of just lazily throwing buffs or penalties in. It would need to start in the campaign, better building management for recruiting, better army compositions, smarter campaign movement, but obviously right through to battle tactics, terrain usage, leveraging range smarter, not just suiciding a couple of units or cavalry and or heroes or lord at your fully ranged units, at your fully ranged armies, etc. So as alternatives, they could just replicate the melee handicaps to ranged. For example, ammunition decrease, missile resistance for enemy army, and magic, for example, WM decrease, magic resistance for enemy army, units to make the whole thing more unfair wholesale. That solution ignores the other factor in why ranged and magic are so OP, the ability to do damage without taking any. Well, we've read this already. The question is, would any of that be fun? Talking about armor again. Man, people seem to just have these weird talking points that they repeat. Improve the AI, remove the ridiculous bonuses that the player can abuse. Damn right. Shitty fucking vertical gameplay, number stacking crap. Then the AI cheats can be reduced in turn. Yeah. Stop compelling the player to stack stupid numbers in order to overcome the AI getting stupid fucking numbers for free. Fucking worthless. Make it similar to Total War, as in infantry has much more armor, missile resistance, and they have enough melee defense to survive for a long time. Yep, I'm in favour of that. Although this risks making the pace slower, which is fine by me, but not everyone likes. Yep, they would never do that, because this game is for casuals that want 5-minute battles. I think we're getting near the bottom. Oh wait, we have 87 more. Alright. And these are all getting downvotes, I think. These are all buried. Let's take a look at the most controversial ones at the bottom. These are all just getting no thumbs up on them. So far, I don't see any massive downvotes. So there's been no one that has been really obnoxious on this place. Wait, I see some, why should the game be balanced around very hard and not, normal difficulty? What the fuck is that? Who's this in response to? AI should never have a bonus to melee. The only battle bonus they should get is smarter decision making and better leadership. Make it that elites are harder to launch. Or just frontline infantry in general, and naturally take less damage from vortex and wind spells, but still take normal from direct spells and maybe bombardments. That sounds sensible, but someone downvoted it. Cap the use of ranged units, don't flat buff everything on hard difficulties, it doesn't make any sense. That's sensible, but cap the use of ranged units is weird. Alright, so I think I'm just disappointed with this thread. There were not many people that had good ideas here. Like, it was a really 350 comments, and only like 5 comments were decent. I don't really remember being impressed by anything. If this was posted on my subreddit, we would have, I think, way better ideas and responses and answers. It's a testament to how this sub is just really not on the ball about how these games work and about how gameplay works. And I think a lot of them show that they have never played Shogun 2. Even Medieval 2. There's a video I made of Medieval 2. Here it is. Why Medieval 2's infantry combat was supreme. This got a lot of views, 46,000 views, 1,000 upvotes, and my thesis was, surprise surprise, it's pretty much the same reason that Shogun 2's was. There's not much difference. Shogun 2 had a slight denaturing effect to its battlefield from how the AI bows get a buff when firing on higher difficulties, easily avoided. Medieval 2 likewise gets a denaturing effect from difficulty, but it's one that goes to the heart of an important part of the gameplay, it's infantry combat. But the thing about Medieval 2 is that it's easy to collect tactical advantages that can easily dwarf this tiny difficulty difference, so the gameplay usually survives unscathed and the player always feels satisfied if they play well. It's so easy to read my own fucking paragraphs, holy shit. It's so easy to read my own writing compared to the shithole sub. What a massive difference between Medieval 2 and Troy, another infantry combat game as shown here, and then I'll link my 7KD one, and then I'll link my Why Total War's Last Success video on difficulty modifiers, and then what have I linked here? Oh yeah, this video that also goes into difficulty modifiers and how 3K's meta is so shit. So to see all of this finally end up on the shithole subreddit is good, and it got 650 upvotes, so it's a problem that is being acknowledged. but the comments are unimpressive to say the least. And CA also themselves seem to acknowledge the situation because, of course, in June, they finally, I think, for the first time that I'm aware of ever, acknowledged that these difficulty modifiers can have a deleterious effect on the gameplay itself. So it's an ongoing situation, things are changing, and in response to that announcement on the 18th of June, I made this video on the 25th of June, a week later, where I went over my history of complaining about this problem to CA, and also this guy made a video on this problem too after me, so he was kind of late to the party. He just basically echoed what I had already said in my video. It's good that he said it, but of course I didn't really get acknowledged whatsoever. Some people in the comments did, and it's good to see people finally talking about this issue and giving it the attention it deserves. So I can't complain. Alright, that's it. So another thread talking about an actual gameplay issue instead of just being a really cringy meme about some fucking Warhammer cartoon character. So it's good. 8 months. Once again, progress of a kind. See you in the next one.